We all rely on it. I mean, whether you're settling a late-night debate or trying to quickly grasp the context of some historical event.
Or looking up a scientific term.
Yeah, there's just one place we all go, often without even thinking about it. We treat it like digital infrastructure.
Like it's always been there. Ubiquitous, always fast, and always free.
And we're talking, of course, about Wikipedia.
It really is the single largest, most accessible reference work ever compiled in human history. It's incredible.
But because it's so available, we rarely stop to think about what's actually going on behind the scenes.
Exactly. The colossal operational machinery, the intense social battles, the sheer scale of the data that exists behind that simple search box.
You can see the finished articles, right?
Yeah.
But we totally miss the data trails, the millions of automated processes,
The evolving code of conduct.
and the constant conflicts that keep this massive project running. So today we're taking a deep dive into Wikipedia itself.
Right, and we're using its own internal statistics, its organizational history, and community dynamics as our primary source material here.
Our mission is really to reveal the unseen scale of this global organization as it approaches its 25th anniversary, which is on January 15, 2026.
We need to understand the social and technical code that governs this vast volunteer army, and maybe most critically, explore the existential challenges it's facing.
Especially with the shifting landscape of internet traffic and, of course, the disruptive rise of generative AI.
Yeah, that's the big one right now.
So before we get into all the battles and the governance, let's just reset our perception of its size. Give us that initial snapshot of just how massive this thing really is.
The numbers are, frankly, mind-bending. Wikipedia is currently available in over 340 languages worldwide.
340.
And when you combine all of those separate editions, they make up more than 66 million articles.
66 million articles. That's just, it's an almost unimaginable repository of organized information.
And it is constantly being accessed. According to their own internal figures from April 2024, the site attracts more than 1.5 billion unique device visits every single month.
Wow.
So to put that in perspective, Wikipedia is consistently ranked as, the world's 7th or 9th most visited website overall. It's not just a website.
No, it's fundamental infrastructure.
Exactly.
And that distinction, moving it from just a database of facts to an essential piece of global infrastructure, that feels crucial. We're not talking about a hobby project anymore.
No, not at all. We are discussing a primary driver of how the world accesses knowledge.
Okay, so to really appreciate that scale, we have to go back to the beginning.
Right, because we have to start with the fact that Wikipedia was absolutely not intended to be this chaotic open access behemoth. Its beginnings were much more constrained.
Much more academic.
Very academic.
So we have to talk about Nupedia, which is this kind of forgotten precursor that provides the perfect contrast to what Wikipedia became.
It really does. Nupedia was founded back on March 9th, 2000. It was owned by a web portal company called Bomis.
And the initial goal was the same, right? A free online encyclopedia.
The goal was the same, but the methodology was entirely different. Nupedia was built on this highly formal 7-step, expert-driven peer review process. Every single article had to be written and approved by credentialed academics.
Which, in the high-speed world of the early internet, just sounds like a recipe for immediate stagnation.
It was. It was so slow, so cumbersome, and it totally failed to scale. After nearly a year, Nupedia had only produced about 24 approved articles.
24.
Yeah. It was an old institutional model trying to operate in a digital space that was all about speed.
And the key figures here were, of course, Jimmy Wales, the CEO of Bomis, and Larry Sanger, who was editor-in-chief of Nupedia.
Correct. Wales is often credited with defining the big goal: create a comprehensive, publicly accessible encyclopedia.
But it was Sanger who saw the problem.
It was Sanger who recognized the operational bottleneck and proposed the strategy to get around that slow expert process. In January 2001, he suggested using the then novel concept of a wiki.
Which is a Hawaiian word, right? Means quick.
It does, and the idea was to use it as a rapid development feeder project to just draft articles that could eventually be polished for Nupedia.
And that feeder project, the quick, rough and ready version, launched on January 15, 2001. We now call it Wikipedia Day.
And it instantly took on a life of its own.
Yeah.
And Sanger, ironically, was the one who named it by blending wiki with encyclopedia. But here's a really critical detail that often gets overlooked.
What's that?
Wikipedia was initially intended to be a for-profit business owned by Bomis. It was not born as this pure, non-profit public good.
Okay, that changes the entire foundational narrative. So if they were planning to run ads or charge for access, what made them pivot to the nonprofit model we know today?
It was a community rebellion. And that's a very telling piece of history. The Spanish Wikipedia community was the first to fork, creating something called Encyclopedia Libre in February 2002.
And why did they do that?
They did it specifically because they feared that BOMIS would eventually introduce commercial advertising and that the community would lose editorial control.
Ah, so that defection spooked whales.
It did. He realized that all the volunteer energy driving the project would just evaporate if commercial interests threatened the core mission.
So it was the threat of commercialization that prompted this organizational defense.
Precisely. This led Wales to announce publicly that Wikipedia would not display ads. And more significantly, the project moved from the commercial wikipedia.com domain to the nonprofit wikipedia.org domain.
So by 2003, it's formally hosted by the Wikimedia Foundation.
Right, an American nonprofit funded almost entirely by reader donations. And that shift, that commitment to free knowledge and community autonomy, that defined the project's lasting DNA.
And it enabled its massive expansion. And once that floodgate of open collaboration was truly open, the project just exploded. It reached a scale that, it dwarfed every previous effort. How did it stack up against history's biggest reference works?
Oh, it's not even a contest anymore. The scale is just monumental. For centuries, the benchmark was the Yongle Encyclopedia, which was assembled during the Ming Dynasty in China, starting in 1408.
Right.
That was the largest encyclopedia ever assembled for nearly 600 years.
600 years holding the record. That's incredible.
It is. Wikipedia surpassed it in 2007. And remember, that comparison is just for the English Wikipedia edition alone.
Just the English one?
Yes. The English edition now has over 7.1 million articles, and the scale just keeps growing across hundreds of languages. When you combine those 66 million articles globally, you're looking at something so far beyond any other compilation in human history that comparison becomes difficult.
And yet, we do tend to focus on the English Wikipedia, given that 7.1 million article count. But the combined force of those other 339 languages is really what makes it a global reference work.
It is.
What does the global reach data tell us about where people are accessing this from?
Well, the traffic data confirms its worldwide dominance, but it also shows a continued concentration. So while over 25% of traffic comes from the United States, we see major international usage.
Okay.
Japan accounts for nearly 7%, and then you've got the UK, Germany, and Russia, each accounting for about 5% of the total visits. That's from September 2025 data.
So 25% from the U.S. is large, but that also means 3/4 of the traffic is coming from everywhere else.
Absolutely. The English Wikipedia, despite its size, gets about 48% of the site's total page views. So the other 330-plus language editions split the remaining 52%.
That's fascinating.
And interestingly, a tiny fraction of languages carry the bulk of that load. The top 10 language editions account for roughly 85% of total traffic.
So while it's available in 340 languages, only a handful are really high volume.
Exactly.
And the Wikimedia Foundation's mission isn't just to support the articles, right? It's to support an entire knowledge ecosystem, which brings us to the sister projects.
Yes, and these are the massive, often ignored engines that support the main encyclopedia. The scale is often invisible because so much of the data lives outside that main article space.
So let's talk about the two biggest, Wikimedia Commons and Wikidata. These are huge projects in their own right.
They are massive. Wikimedia Commons, which is the centralized repository for all the free knowledge, multimedia images, sound files, video, it's the largest project by sheer file count and size.
Okay, what kind of numbers are we talking about?
It hosts over 132 million files. That amounts to roughly 585 terabytes of data.
Wow.
So every photo you see on a Wikipedia page, every map, every sound clip, it all lives in Commons.
So a reader accessing an article is potentially pulling data from the English Wikipedia for text, maybe the German Wikipedia if they change language, and always from Wikimedia Commons for media, all at the same time.
Precisely. And then there's Wikidata,
Right.
which is the structural, editable knowledge base that provides the facts used across all language editions. It contains over 120 million data items.
So think of it as the shared spine of structured information.
That's a great way to put it. Dates, identifiers, relationships, all the things that all language Wikipedias can draw from instantly.
So that structure is what allows a data box on the side of a biography to be updated in one place and then instantly reflected across all 340 language editions.
It creates enormous efficiency, and then you have the other projects, many of which are themselves larger than established national encyclopedias.
Like Wiktionary.
Wiktionary, the Dictionary and Thesaurus Project, has over 8.6 million entries in English alone. Then there's Wikibooks for collaboratively written textbooks, Wiki, quote, Wikisource. It's an enormous layered machine.
It really sounds like the Foundation recognized very early on that articles needed a centralized infrastructure to scale successfully.
They did. Not just text, but media, structured data, and governance.
So the scale of the content is one half of the story.
Right. The scale of the activity is what truly reveals the operational demands. We have to look at the velocity. How fast is this encyclopedia actually changing?
We've established that it's a constant utility, but what does that real-time activity look like across the whole ecosystem?
It's dizzying. Across all Wikimedia projects, Wikipedia, Commons, Wiktionary, everything, there are consistently over 18 edits submitted every second globally.
Every second?
Every single second. And during that same second, the projects receive nearly 10,000 page views from readers.
Wait, 18 edits per second? That's just a staggering volume.
Yeah.
It means in the time it takes us to finish this sentence, dozens of changes have been submitted.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's zoom in on the English Wikipedia specifically.
Just the English edition sees over 2 edits and more than 4,000 page views every second. In total, the English Wikipedia processed 72 million edits in 2024.
Okay.
But here's where we have to confront the reality of the volunteer effort versus automation. Bots versus humans.
Right, because we tend to envision this crowd of people tapping away at their keyboards. But the data clearly shows that automation is a huge force multiplier here.
It's essential infrastructure. Globally, looking across all Wikimedia projects, roughly half of all edits, so that's 310 million out of a total of 597 million in 2024, were performed by bots.
And these aren't malicious bots.
No, not at all. They're essential cleaning crews. They fix template errors, link categories, run security functions, and enforce basic formatting standards.
So half the work globally is automated. What about for the English Wikipedia specifically?
On the English Wikipedia in 2024, those 72 million total edits were split. You had 48 million human edits and 24 million bot edits.
So about a third of the English language editing effort is automated.
Roughly, yeah. And without that automation, the human community would just instantly drown in maintenance tasks and vandalism.
It really highlights that dual nature of the work, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You have humans providing the subjective, encyclopedic content and judgment.
And then you have bots providing the objective, relentless cleanup and structural organization.
And this allows for this massive content volume to be added continuously.
The volume is so hard to grasp. In 2024, human editors added 4.3 billion bytes of new text to articles.
Okay, what does that even mean in practical terms?
Well, if you take an average professional book volume at, say, 500 standard pages, that's the equivalent of adding about 11 brand new 500-page book volumes to the encyclopedia every single day.
11 books per day. Most academic institutions would collapse trying to publish one reference book a month.
And Wikipedia manages 11 per day, 365 days a year, with volunteer labor and automation. It's a phenomenal rate of growth.
Yet this phenomenal volume creation comes with a fundamental paradox, doesn't it? The paradox of the volunteer community. Who is actually writing those 11 books?
Right, that's the question.
Because it's certainly not the entire 1.5 billion unique visitors or even a majority of the registered users.
Not even close. That's the key insight. The volume of work is stunningly concentrated. A famous 2009 study pointed out that the most active 2% of users...
That's 2%.
Yes, we're talking about just 1,400 people at the time. They were responsible for performing 73.4% of all the edits.
Wait, if 1,400 people are doing nearly 3/4 of the editorial work, we aren't relying on the wisdom of the crowds at all.
No.
We're relying on the intense, focused dedication of an extremely small, highly concentrated core of editors. That sounds less like a democracy and more like an intense oligarchy of volunteers.
That is the essential contradiction. The scale is global, the access is open, but the actual production and maintenance is driven by a tiny, dedicated volunteer class. Jimmy Wales himself called it a dedicated group of a few hundred volunteers.
And this concentrated power base coincided with that notable decline in editors we saw over the last 2 decades.
Yes. The growth rate of the English Wikipedia peaked around 2007, By 2013, the average number of articles added daily had dropped by more than half, from 1,800 a day to about 800 a day. This stall, or decline, it's an organizational maturity challenge.
What were the root causes cited for that stagnation?
It was a few factors coming together. One was just the exhaustion of the low-hanging fruit, all the obvious topics that clearly needed an article.
Right.
Another was the rise of structural complexity. They called it increased coordination and overhead costs. As the encyclopedia became massive, the internal rules, policies, and guidelines needed to govern it also grew exponentially.
So as the project professionalized and formalized its structure to deal with the scale, the barrier to entry went up.
Exactly.
And that led to the exclusion of newcomers and resistance to new edits because new contributors were just overwhelmed by the bureaucracy and the fierce scrutiny of that established core.
That's the link we need to make. The stalling of that initial chaotic growth necessitated the formalization of the governance code, the 5 pillars.
The constitution of this massive digital republic.
That's what they are, the philosophical bedrock that defines the project, even if the enforcement mechanisms are complex.
Okay, let's walk through them. What's the first pillar?
First and simplest. Wikipedia is an encyclopedia. It's not a soapbox. It's not a collection of opinions. It's not a dictionary. That's Wiktionary.
So it must summarize information, not create it.
Precisely. The second is the most critical and often the most debated, neutral point of view, or NPOV.
This is the big one.
This is the policy that gives Wikipedia its credibility. It requires that all significant views published by reliable sources be represented fairly, proportionally, and without bias. You aren't stating personal truths, you're reporting what reliable sources state.
Right. And pillar 3.
It is free content. This connects directly back to that decision to move to the Wikimedia Foundation. Everything is published under a license that allows anyone to use, edit, and distribute the content, non-negotiable.
Got it. And 4.
Fourth, editors must treat each other with respect and civility. This governs behavior within the community, trying to maintain a functional environment despite some very intense debates.
And finally, the 5th pillar, which is the great paradox.
Wikipedia has no firm rules.
That one always feels like an organizational joke when you see how many rules and guidelines there actually are. How do they square no firm rules with this massive bureaucracy?
The intention is that rules are descriptive, not prescriptive. It means the policies themselves are flexible and defined by community consensus, not by some external legal decree. The rules serve the project, and the community can collectively change them if they stop serving the project.
But in practice, applying those rules leads to intense collaborative editing and a lot of conflict.
The conflict is legendary. The fact that the process relies on consensus inevitably means that highly contentious topics become hot zones for edit warring.
Sure.
It's just a reality of collaborative knowledge creation. Sources point to specific historical and political articles, like those related to the Second Intifada or recent Israel-Gaza conflicts, as consistent flashpoints.
And the conflict isn't just about the text itself, is it?
No, it's about inclusion and exclusion. Since the beginning, there have been roughly 500,000 recorded deletion debates where editors fight over whether a topic is notable enough to even merit an article.
500,000 debates just to delete something. That suggests the core function of the active community is often regulatory and defensive, not just creative. So how does the organization enforce stability when its core principles are openness and consensus?
Well, they rely on technical controls managed by that established community, specifically protection levels. When a page is prone to sustained vandalism or just rapid cycles of edit warring, it gets protected.
What are the different tiers of protection?
The most common is semi-protected. This means only auto-confirmed users can modify the page. And an auto-confirmed user is typically someone whose account has been around for a bit, say 4 days, and has made a minimum number of edits, like 10.
So it's a technical mechanism designed to raise the barrier of participation for disruptive users.
But keeps it low enough for established volunteers. Exactly. If a page is extremely contentious, it can be put under full protection, which means only administrators, the highest tier of elected community members, can make changes.
So page protection is really one of the most important tools for regulating the market of ideas.
It is. Observers inside the project say it's perhaps the most important means of doing that. Stability, at times, trumps pure openness.
And all of this debate, this rulemaking and administration, it happens in a layer of the project that most readers never even see. The hidden pages.
Right. Most readers only see namespace 0, the main articles. but the English Wikipedia is composed of 11 different namespaces. These are just prefixes used to organize different types of pages.
And these internal spaces are the administrative backbone.
They are. The critical ones are the talk pages, where editors coordinate and debate the content of a specific article.
And there are a lot of them.
The English Wikipedia has 8.1 million talk pages for articles, which is actually more than the number of articles themselves, and 2 to 3 million human edits are made annually just to these talk pages. This is the engine of consensus.
So the community often spends more time talking about the articles than actively writing them.
In many cases, yes.
Oh, wait.
And then there's the Wikipedia prefix, the project namespace, which is where the entire self-governance machine runs. All the policies, guidelines, dilution debates. This is where the core community lives, far removed from the general reader.
For its first decade or so, Wikipedia was really synonymous with controversy about its accuracy. Students were always told, never, ever to cite it. But in the last decade, we've seen this dramatic evolution in the quality debate.
The reputation has fundamentally shifted. While those initial criticisms in the 2000s were often justified, due to hoaxes and vandalism, the sheer volume of review and correction over 20-plus years has really stabilized the project.
To the point where it's now seen as a tool for good.
Absolutely. The reliability has improved so much that it's now frequently cited as a tool for combating fake news, especially because the community can so rapidly update and cite sources on breaking events. Public trust has really grown since the late 2010s.
That being said, when we look at the specific metrics, the depth of that quality is extremely uneven. The reputation might be high overall, but the typical article tells a very different story.
It's the paradox of the long tail applied to quality. As of 2024, about half of the 7.1 million English articles are still marked as stubs.
And a stub is just an article that's too short to provide adequate coverage.
Right. The median article, the one right in the middle, not the famous ones, contains only 300 to 350 words. That's barely 13 sentences.
So we have this massive edifice of knowledge where half the bricks are still these tiny foundational blocks.
Correct. And supporting that shallow content, about half of all articles have 4 or fewer references. So while the highest quality articles are world-class, the overwhelming bulk of the encyclopedia remains shallow, low-reference material.
And yet, even with that unevenness, the scholarly community has quietly integrated it into its own research structure.
That's maybe the most powerful evidence of its improving reception. As of January 2023, the data shows over 55,000 English Wikipedia articles have been cited 92,300 times in scholarly journals.
So researchers are citing Wikipedia in their own peer-reviewed work.
Yeah, a practice that would have been unthinkable 20 years ago. It suggests that academics now view Wikipedia as a legitimate tool for quickly finding comprehensive, well-structured summaries, even if they still have to go to the primary sources.
Let's pivot to a challenge that the community itself is desperately trying to address: systemic bias.
Right.
Because the encyclopedia is inherently a mirror of its volunteer editors and the cultural context they operate in.
And that reflection is deeply skewed. Wikipedia has been consistently and correctly criticized for an ingrained geographical bias, often called Eurocentric, and an undeniable gender bias.
And the data on the gender gap is particularly stark.
It is, and it reveals how some of those foundational policies actually perpetuate the issue.
Give us the hard numbers on the gender gap as of early 2025.
As of January 2025, only 20% of biographies on the English Wikipedia are about women.
Just 20%.
Which leaves 79.8% of biographies dedicated to men. It's a massive 4-to-1 disparity. Roughly 400,000 biographies about women versus over 1.6 million about men.
And that disparity isn't random. It's often linked back to that core governance code, specifically the notability policy.
Exactly. The notability policy requires topics to have significant coverage and reliable secondary sources.
So if historical record-keeping, journalism, and academic study have disproportionately focused on men in Western Europe and North America,
which is a documented historical fact,
then the pool of available sources for women or figures from the Global South is just inherently smaller.
And that makes it harder for articles about these underrepresented groups to meet the notability threshold, which perpetuates the geographical bias and also recency bias.
So the very policy designed to ensure quality notability acts as this inadvertent gatekeeper, amplifying existing societal biases.
It's a profound structural challenge. The narratives tend to be skewed towards Western European events in recent years. The community is fighting this, but the underlying mechanism of sourcing dictates the outcome.
And now, as if maintaining quality and fighting inherent bias weren't enough, Wikipedia faces this huge external challenge that strikes at its very foundation, the AI and traffic challenge.
This is perhaps the most defining crisis as they approach their 25th anniversary. Wikipedia is the single largest, highest quality, freely available training data set for large language models.
And generative AI is just consuming Wikipedia's output at an industrial scale.
It is. We have data showing the immediate infrastructural strain.
They're dealing with the cost of this.
Since January 2024, the Wikimedia Foundation reported a roughly 50% increase in bandwidth use. And this explosion is not from human readers.
It's from scraper bots.
It's from scraper bots belonging to massive tech companies that are training their LLMs using Wikipedia's content.
Let's unpack that financial reality for a second. The foundation is a nonprofit funded by reader donations, dedicated to providing free knowledge. And they are now effectively footing the bill for the massive data infrastructure costing millions, so that multi-billion-dollar tech companies can scrape and train their competing products for free.
It's an enormous ethical and financial dilemma. It's the ultimate information paradox. Wikipedia's commitment to free knowledge enabled the AI revolution.
And now that revolution is turning around and eating the host's lunch.
And the worst part is the impact on human readership.
Right, because the 50% increase in bot traffic is driving costs up, while the human click-through rate is starting to suffer.
Exactly. In October 2025, the Foundation reported an estimated 8% decline in human page views compared to the same period in 2024.
And the suspicion is?
The overwhelming suspicion is that generative AI and search summaries are answering users' questions directly on the search page, pulling the information from Wikipedia without requiring the user to click through to the source.
So the user gets the information that Wikipedia provided, but the Foundation loses the click, the traffic, and the opportunity for donations.
Right. If this trend continues, it threatens the long-term relevance and the entire funding model of the organization. It's a fundamental challenge to the utility of the open web.
And yet, despite that 8% drop in human traffic, the absolute traffic scale is still immense.
Oh, yeah. We are still talking about 2 billion unique devices monthly across all projects, with the English Wikipedia alone pulling in 10 billion page views each month.
So let's look at what people are reading, because the most viewed articles lists always give us this unfiltered look into the world's collective consciousness. What dominated in 2024?
The 2024 English Wikipedia list is a perfect snapshot of global events, pop culture, and major political cycles.
Okay, let's hear it.
Deaths in 2024 with 49 million views. That's always a high traffic one. Then you have YouTube, the U.S. presidential election, Kamala Harris, Donald Trump.
The big political players.
Right. Then the Indian Premier League showing that huge regional viewership, Deadpool and Wolverine for pop culture, Project 2025, ChatGPT, and the Indian general election.
That is a clear snapshot of where global interest, amplified by the English-speaking world, was focused. But you noted a fascinating contrast between languages.
Yeah, if you look at the Spanish Wikipedia's top 10, the political focus is entirely different. None of their 10 most viewed articles related to the U.S. elections. Donald Trump was only their 31st most viewed article, and Kamala Harris was 68th. It shows that readership trends are inherently shaped by the cultural and geographical interests of the visitors, not just global events filtered through an English lens.
And before we conclude, we have to connect this back to the beginning, the scale. We've talked about 11 books added daily and millions of views on top articles. But what about the vast majority of that 7.1 million article collection?
This is the hidden reality. The vast majority of the articles exist in the long tail of obscurity. In 2023, data showed that 90% of all articles averaged between 0 and 10 page views per day.
90% are getting 10 or fewer views a day.
Yes. And the median article, the one right in the middle, gets about 1 page view per week.
1 view per week.
Think about that juxtaposition. You have articles getting 49 million views a year, and the typical article getting 52 views a year. If Wikipedia is this massive library, 90% of the books never leave the shelf.
And half of the remaining 10% are still in rough draft form.
That's it. That is the ultimate contradiction. It's the world's fastest, most relevant knowledge source for high-traffic events, and at the same time, a massive, dusty archive of low-traffic stubs, written by an ever-dwindling core of dedicated editors.
What we've really analyzed today is a duality.
It is. A colossal infrastructure built on these highly idealistic open-source principles, the 5 pillars, yet practically governed by the chaotic, intense, and highly concentrated efforts of a few thousand committed volunteers.
And the internal data confirms that the health, the stability, the growth of the project It all relies on this small, powerful core.
A core that must simultaneously perform constant maintenance, fight complex edit wars, combat systemic bias, and now regulate the massive strain from the very AI systems that are cannibalizing its human traffic.
Which brings us to the core existential challenge the organization has to face as it approaches that 25th birthday.
How does the community ensure comprehensive quality when the scale of the encyclopedia has so completely overwhelmed the capacity of its community?
Let's just look at that quality metric again. Only 6,665 out of 7.1 million English articles are considered featured articles, the highest standard of quality.
Which is a minuscule 0.1% of the entire encyclopedia. We celebrate adding 11 book volumes a day, but the scale of quality control means that for every 1,040 articles added, only one is considered truly world-class.
So the question then becomes, what?
If Wikipedia is struggling to manage its long tail and half of its content remains a shallow stub, should the definition of quality for a global, crowdsourced, utilitarian encyclopedia fundamentally change?
Yeah.
Or will the AI scrape, summarize, and ultimately hollow out that massive, under-edited long tail, forcing the community to focus solely on perfecting the bright 1% that truly matters, leaving the rest to just gather digital dust?
Something to ponder the next time your search engine gives you an instant answer, pulled from the work of volunteers who you never see and may never click on.